Well, heck yeah, man. Let's rock this. So we got Mr. Keyen Lage from South Dakota, but world traveler. Currently home base is in Miami, was in LA for a little bit. Before that, I think it was Brazil. And now tomorrow you're going to be in Morocco, starting a Africa to Europe tour from Morocco to Egypt to different countries around Europe, and then I think you're landing in Russia for a couple months. So we'll definitely talk about that. But this is a great friend of mine and somebody that's been a big inspiration for me and helped me a ton. We started as friends, and then we were both in similar space as far as coaching, personal, spiritual development, relationship dynamics, and things like that. And then we connected a couple times in Arizona for a friend's birthday and just virtually for a couple years. And then we were part of a men's group together. And quite frankly, I've told you before, I always had a little bit of an ego as far as wanting to work with you as a coach, because my philosophy was I always thought I was very wise for my age. And so most of my mentors or coaches or people I looked up to were always at least 5, 6, 10, 20 years older than me. And usually people around my age were my peers or people that I influenced. And so I was like, I'm not going to be learning from this guy that's my age. And then we were part of a men's group together, accountability, talking about deep stuff that men don't always get the opportunity to talk about. And I think you were drawn to some of the stuff that I was opening up about, and you messaged me and you were like, hey, let's dive deeper into that. And then it started with us just kind of connecting casually to then transitioning into more of coaching sessions. And we had some extremely powerful experiences together. And then you presented a more serious, formal opportunity to work together. And I hired you as my coach. And we've been working together on and off for about a year. And it's been absolutely life-changing, to the point where I've told a ton of people that I'm close with about you, who have also now worked with you and been coached by you, because of the impact that you've had on me and others. It has been so profound, including, my wife and a lot of other close people. So yeah, you mean a lot to me. You've had a big impact on me, and I'm excited to dive into this today with you, bro. So welcome on.
Thank you for having me on here, man. And the whole time when you're talking, I know you're talking a lot about me and the feelings you have towards our interactions and our relationship, but it's just been so cool to see you just take life by the balls and really just like run with it and connect to that place of your deepest passions, inspirations, and just run with it, because it's not easy to do, as you know. So to come here to the space that you have, the podcast that you have, to be around the people that are in your community that clearly look up to you, and to see firsthand you just doing your thing in your environment here in Atlanta is so inspiring to see, and makes me feel so good to be able to be part of. As a friend, we've done some coaching, but also a peer in the space of coaching, and knowing how powerful you are, and you being willing to entrust me to help you go a little deeper in yourself, who's already a super fucking powerful human. And just to see your evolution and the power that you demonstrate in the space that you're in. So grateful to be here.
So I remember the main question I was going to ask is, before we started, I asked if there was any questions that were off the table. And what I really meant by that is, could we be real in a way that others don't see? Because I don't really give a fuck to ask you questions about what was your background, what is your skill set. Like I want to display your power.
I don't want to answer those questions.
And I don't
anymore.
think people have seen that. And I think that would be most powerful. But yeah, I'm like getting emotional right now, because I could sense how powerful this is going to be. But my head is not in the right space right now. And I want you to even help me navigate to a place of getting...
Why do you say your head's not in the right space?
...prepared for this? Because the first question that I had was, one of my closest family members that you've helped me navigate a lot through, got arrested last night, and I'm looking at the text on the way here, like being bombarded by nobody being able to help her, and I have like a full list of shit to do today, and I'm like, I want to help her, but like, what the fuck do I do right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I have this podcast. I have another one lined up after. I have clients that I have to onboard. And so the question I was going to have, which you can answer it or just disregard it, is like, how, I'm not trying to make a fucking excuse, but how does somebody, when focus and concentration is one of the most important pieces of success, how does somebody that has all this shit being bombarded at them with my family, with my wife's family, some of the questions that I wanted to ask you about as far as navigating through, like, yeah, like what level is it an excuse versus how do you fucking just push through? And what does pushing through in that dynamic look like?
It definitely is not always an easy thing. And in your specific circumstance, I cannot personally relate. So I don't fully know. But what I can say about us as people, that we do always have some element of a very difficult distraction that comes into our life. There's a certain level of releasing and relinquishing control that can be the thing that allows for some of the tension to be released. I know when it's someone like a parent or a close friend, being able to let go of that need to have to try to fix the situation or make the situation be anything other than what it is can oftentimes be the catalyst to allow what's meant to happen, that's best case for everyone, to happen. And I can't relate from the standpoint of a mom, but I can from the standpoint of a best friend growing up and being diagnosed bipolar, schizophrenic, multiple personality. I know you've dealt with some of that yourself, but really going through that with him and getting to the point where I let go fully of the need to have to help him. Not just mentally, but emotionally letting go of that. Life doesn't need as much active participation and things like that than I think we tend to think because people are close to us. So relinquishing some of that need to have to control and manage all those situations, I think can be the thing that allows for some of the tension to be released and for clarity to emerge as far as how to properly go about the situation. Because so much of the tension comes from, in you right now, is the need to have to try to make the situation be something other than what it is. It's like, what do I do? How do I support? How do I fix? And that's where so much of the overwhelm can come from. And it's your mom. It's your mom. I know you've been dealing with something like this for a while. It's not like it's like the first time something like this has happened. And I'm sure it doesn't necessarily get easier, but sometimes relinquishing that responsibility, I know it's easier said than done, can be one of the most powerful things that you can do to allow things to unfold in God's way. And now some other people that are highly addicted to control would say something else, but I operate in a different place. And I think by emotionally allowing yourself to let go of being your mom's keeper, like I said, easier said than done, maybe we can go deeper into that, can be something that allows for life to just unfold the way that it's supposed to. And oftentimes it's moms that go through this, like letting go of their kids, letting go of the need to have to be that person for their kids. And now in your circumstance, based off of what it is, it's the opposite. And I wouldn't wish that upon any child. But that's the nature of the beast that you have, and you're brave as fuck for being willing to go through it. And be willing to talk about it here in this space But man, most of it's just giving that person up to God and not letting the internal feeling of responsibility towards her sway you and move you. It's like a deep letting go. It's like a deep, just like in the stomach, just like, oh, way down. Just like, let go, let go, let go. Like, she's not mine. Let go, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. And just keep going deeper and just let go of her. Just let go of her. Like, let her go all the way. Like, if you allowed yourself to just let her go all the way, whatever the worst possible thing is that you're trying to prevent from happening in her life, can you let yourself go there? Can you let yourself just get lost in whatever it is you're trying to prevent? The worst possible outcome in your mind. Can you let yourself go there and just dance in that space of being in it? Let her go. Just let her go all the way. Let her go. Let her go. Let her go. Let go. Just go deeper into it. The worst possible scenario that your mind is trying to hedge against by trying to control the whole thing, by trying to fix it, trying to excessively be there for her in a way you feel like you need to, based on whatever sense of responsibility is inside of you. Just let go more. Just let go. Just let go more. Just let go more. Just let go more. And the letting go isn't completely just abandoning her in this external reality, but it's allowing for the tension to be released and for space to open up for real, actual understanding of what the situation needs outside of your immediate addiction to taking care of her. Right? Shattering that addiction that's there, that excessive responsibility that's emotionally holding you in that place. Right? Let go more, let go more, let go more. Let her go. Let her go. If it's death, if it's the worst possible situation outside of death, I don't know what it is for you, but just let yourself go there with her. Let her go there. Let her go. Like, actually walk her to it. Like, hold her hand and say, here, go here. Walk her into it. All the way, all the way. Let go, let go, let go, let go. Walk her into it all the way. Hold her hand into it. Don't just like notice her as you're turning your head away, trying to not see it. Walk her there. Take her there. Take her to that place, the worst possible place in your mind that you're trying to hedge against through holding on to this deep sense of responsibility. Take her there. Walk her there. And watch her in it. Watch her go through it, all of it. Just fully be in it. The worst possible, just like all the way. All the way. Walk her there. Watch her in it. Let her go. Just let her go. Mom, go. All the way, all the way. Let go, let go, let go. Walk her there. Watch it. Just watch as it's happening. Be in it. Experience it. Let go of her. She is not yours. All the way, all the way, all the way, all the way. She is not yours. Let her go. Watch her in it. Just watch her in it. And stay in it. All the way in. What are you noticing?
two most important parts, the addiction, the emotional addiction and attachment is definitely spot on. And let her go, she's not yours, which that threatens the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
But those both hit for sure.
Keep in mind too, through this, it's letting go of her, but in the letting go is what allows for the emotion to not drive you and allows for more of a deeper, more God ordained inspiration to come through you.
A whole place to help her, yeah.
Yeah.
By being a more powerful structure, because emotionally there's definitely an aspect of where I'm helping her from the kid that had to help her when she was isolated and leaning on me emotionally at a very young age, all the way up until today. My whole life, basically. Yeah, and the biggest fear in it is dealing with the fear of what would happen if she doesn't have me, because she's leaned on me or my brothers my whole life. But to your point, it's like, yeah, but the best thing to do is to let it go.
Yeah, and that can be easier said than done. But what I've found in actively doing that in my life with different people, with my clients, when that little voice gets offended that feels like it's responsible or obligated, normally it's proven wrong if I sit in the tension long enough of not allowing myself to fulfill that role or that addiction to that role that I've historically played. And it's wild to see how I can be more separated, but the outcome seems to be better off for everybody when it happens. And it's going to offend the shit out of that part of yourself. It's going to offend the shit out of that part of yourself that wants to try to latch to that excessive control, because a different outcome will happen. A more positive outcome will happen, but it's the subconscious part of your brain that is addicted to that role is not going to like it.
What part of my ego enjoys or craves that connection with her?
Well, it's just a role.
Because addiction represents something that feeds an insecurity in me. So what insecurity does it?
But sometimes it's just about programming. Like a child is naturally going to take on and fill in that space for an incapable mother. So it's not necessarily an insecurity, but more about just a role and a programmed role that you've had, that you had to fill the space in for, that a young child doesn't have the capacity to consciously not take on. So it's more just the programming. It's more just deconstructing the programming and the role that you took on where you weren't, at an age where you weren't capable of consciously understanding this stuff. I don't even want to make it about insecurity. I just want to make it about a role that you're killing off by not feeding into it in this moment, by you letting yourself go there, by letting her die in your mind and fully allowing yourself emotionally to experience that. You're allowing that role to start to shatter, right? When you allow yourself to not only be okay with letting her go there in your mind, but walking her to that place and guiding her into it, it's killing that role even more. But the truth is that a young child doesn't really know what a mom needs. It just sees a mom emotionally unstable and wants to try to fill in the gap for what's best, which, women know. That's not always what women need. If we try to take on their current emotional state as the problem that needs to be solved, it'll lead us to chaos, right? We try to cater to every emotion that a woman has, It'll lead us to chaos. So oftentimes the most powerful thing you can do in a space with a woman that is emotionally not in a sturdy place isn't to cater to her emotional state, but to just be present in the place with her and let her go through it. But as a young child, you learn, oh, mom's not feeling this way. I have to, I got to fill it in. You're not aware of how women work as a young child. And if you try to do that for a woman, if you try to do that for your mom, that just actually gives her a level of power she doesn't really want. Because you're validating every single emotional state that she has as being something that's real.
Valid.
And oftentimes the emotion isn't valid, contrary to what society will say. But you can be in that space with her and validate her in it by showing your presence, but not giving too much power to it as far as overly catering. But a young child doesn't know that.
Camilla will call me out on this because it shows up in our relationship. When I was young and she would lean on me, and it was overwhelming, obviously, and I didn't know how to articulate that, I would react emotionally in usually an angry way, or I'd project, or I'd be disrespectful. And what was really happening underneath that was I was hurt, lonely, scared, because I was by myself with my mom. Parents got divorced, brothers went to move with my dad. And all that pressure was on me. And so, yeah, I didn't know how to respond to it, but it would come off as disrespectful and angry because maybe I didn't know how, or there wasn't anybody to express how I really felt of like, dude, I'm fucking scared. I don't know how to deal with this.
Or you didn't have the capacity either.
And so now it's showing up with Camilla when she'll ask simple things sometimes, I'll get like, all right, why are you asking that? And she's like, dude, it's a simple question. But it's that trigger of like anything that an intimate female person in my life kind of wants to request from me, it automatically like electrifies that part of my nervous system of like, get away from this.
I can see that for sure. I also think there's a dimension, an element of it that you don't have the emotional capacity because that's reserved for mom. And so I would argue probably back when you're probably more responsible then than you are now, or would you say it's about equivalent back in the day when you maybe first started dating Camilla?
Way more now.
Way more now?
Responsible now, yeah.
Okay. I mean, more subconsciously responsible then. Like you're still holding down emotional space for a really unstable mom, even though you maybe not as intentional about the actions you're taking, you're still subconsciously holding down the emotional space.
Which is blocking the space to be able to provide for her.
Correct. Which happens a lot. It happens a lot with people that have very emotionally unstable. Now, women in general tend to be unstable, but to a point where she has no type of grounding within herself, that space can be reserved for mom. And not having that space then for someone that you really want to give it to because it's being subconsciously reserved for mom. And that can mess up a lot of relationships. But it's very powerful that you've been able to, get to the point that you are in your relationship dynamic with Camilla and the roles that you guys play, regardless of this happening. It's a testament to you as a person and your ability to show up even though you might not be perfect. But that's a very real thing. Emotional space reserved for mom. It isn't able to be deployed for the woman that you really are meant to hold the space down for. So you can probably give yourself a little bit of grace in this.
You've never referred to it as this, but I don't know where you stand on the beliefs of, chakras and throat chakra, chest. I don't really know if I would say I subscribe to that fully, but there's definitely truth in it that I believe in as far as energetic blockages. We'll just leave it as simple as that.
Yeah.
I've definitely felt some blockages in my heart, throat, but during that experience it was in my jaw, which was odd. But the first question that I was going to ask you planned to ask you before all this, so it was totally unplanned, but needed. Also, it's really cool that your presence alone has the ability to do that. And that's just such a great representation of purpose, because if somebody's purpose is business operations and scaling a business, the first question energetically I may be gravitated towards asking is, dude, this business challenge that I'm facing, like, what is it? And just you being you and being there and your presence in essence gravitated me to ask and dive into that question. And it was sharper, as you obviously could tell. But the last thing I was going to do is just bullshit a podcast and avoid the question that is clearly was in the back of my mind. Now it's way better spot of quote unquote releasing that energy for sure.
I appreciate you allowing yourself to move through the realness.
I'm glad
it feels better to me.
I'm glad we could do that, because like I said, I didn't want to just ask you typical interview questions. I wanted people to see how powerful you have been to me and others and your gift. And that's just a sliver of it as far as what we've gone deep into. But that's a great representation and introduction to why I appreciate you and what your power is. But the original first question, I was in a group call. Justin will like this too. I was in a group call the last week or two, and it was so spiritual. I don't even know the guy's name. I don't know him, but it was needed for me. It was a message that was needed for me spiritually. And I get on the call, and my internal speaker in my computer is a little buggy. It's kind of broken. So I have to put on these external headphones. But as I was on, a lot of my clients know before, if I don't have my headphones, the audio comes through really, really low. And so he didn't know that, of course, but I'm getting called out randomly to do an introduction. I didn't know I needed to. It was like 40 to 50 people on this video call. And I jump in it introducing myself, and some dickhead responds, because I was, I'm a performance coach, focused on purpose, doing my spiel. And then people are like, we can't hear you. And then one guy goes, he's the master at whisper coaching.
Troll.
But it was so powerful, because I'm going to show you this. We could cut it out if we want, but I've been analyzing my videos. So it's going into content, but it also relates to everything in my life. How I speak, how I carry myself, how I make content. Justin was kind of grilling me on certain pieces that we were making. He's like, bro, you got to project and articulate more powerfully in everything. And that's social media today. But again, not just social media, just how you show up and act in every environment, whether it's coaching, speaking, communicating in any way. And I'll analyze certain videos that I post and the videos that get better engagement than those that don't. And I'll say this as an asterisk. I'm not the type that just wants to settle with, you need to do more and be more consistent. I have a theory that the power of consistency is not just by doing the same rep over and over. It's by doing a rep over and over long enough so that you can tweak the couple millimeter things that you're doing off, or can refine so that it can get better. But the only way to truly get better through consistency is through evaluation of auditing yourself for refining your output in the best possible way, if that makes sense. And so I'll post content and immediately pick something up on it and be like, man, I should have cut this out. I should have been straight to the point here. I should have been louder here. For example, if you go through, so this is a video that was better projection.
Surprised at where you guys are right now, as far as, did you think you would be further, or are you further along than you expected? At the time, I couldn't comprehend the numbers we're doing.
What's the issue?
I had my goal setting.
The whisper coaching thing is very real. Were you surprised at where you were right now? Monotone.
Further along than you expected. At the time, I couldn't.
Way difference in articulation. For example, this guy gets more views than he did on that video. And I think a big part is because the hook is everything. And in the beginning, first couple seconds, people are probably like, I'm lost. What's this guy talking about? I don't know this guy. He's whispering. I can't hear him. What the heck? And then it transitions to him and he's like, boom. So I think, as everything is spiritual, the master whisper coaching was so powerful for me, because I'm like, dude, that's fucking true. And I think also there's a blockage for sure energetically when it comes to speaking as powerfully as I do in the most comfortable environments and know I have the ability to and can. Number one. Number two, what we just discussed, I lost my voice at that early age. And if somebody has low power in their communication or articulation, there's always a spiritual reason. Because I think every negative thing in life is a byproduct of something deeper that needs to be released, moved through, processed, navigated through, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think mine could be, I don't know, but could be, related to that moment of feeling my voice was suppressed and I didn't know how to respond. And it's interesting, now that I say that, sometimes my best articulation and most sharpest communication is when there's a little bit of anger involved or a lot of anger. Like when I'm in a heated debate, I could flow like very powerfully, very eloquently. I could speak very clean. But when there's fear underneath it, that's when there's something there. So that, number two, and number three, that was one of the first things you called me out and coached me through. So we would get on these coaching sessions, and I'm talking to Justin right now, but we would get on these coaching sessions early on, and I would explain kind of like what my issues were, and Keyen would just look at me through the video and just respond and just be like, oh. And he's like, that's how you fucking sound right now. And it when you did that the first time, like he's laughing because he knows that's such a Keyen thing to do. But he literally just was like, oh, he's like, God, I can't deal with this. It's just such like, oh. And he kept doing it, and it triggered something in me so powerfully. So that was a wide frame, but go into that.
I mean, yeah, there definitely can be blockages. You mentioned the chakras and you mentioned the areas in the body. I similar to most things in life, I kind of take the similar approach with religion as well, where I don't really try to like define it and put it into a box as far as what it actually is, and more so just like feel it and know how it works and experience it. And I actively feel that in my body, different energetic blockages and also energy in general. And I help people move through energy in their body for sure without necessarily defining it, more of just like, where do you feel that? What's it feel like? Without getting into the technicalities of what others have maybe put labels on it as. But yeah, you did it. We worked through it. And I don't see it as being something that you have an issue with as much anymore.
Example to add to it, I would say, as far as how powerfully I'm showing up on social media, compared to where it should be, is probably I don't know if you'd agree, Justin, a 4 out of 10, maybe a 3. How I've showed up powerfully at in-person events, maybe a 7. It's a little bit more. Previous events or previous situations, random times at Bible study or certain
What's the expectation you have of yourself? Like, what do you expect yourself to show up as?
I guess how I'd summarize it is total freedom to express my voice as authentically as possible, because how I've been showing up, and again, this is the power of consistency, because I put out a message that I'm excited about, but then I look back on it and I'm like, dude, that was like 40% of what you really have. And so it's good because I'm trial and error and I'm refining and getting better and closer to that place of total radical freedom. But some of the best speakers that I respect most, that's how, it's not like they're the most smartest, most intelligent, genius people ever. My theory is they've aligned their internal thoughts and feelings and emotions with their external expression most closely, and they just completely are free to authentically express.
Or they're great actors.
And the emotion that invokes is what's powerful, scales, and impacts. Correct. And I think if I just show up how I have and do that more consistently, once a day, even 2 times a day, 3 times a day, it will grow because of just reach, but it won't grow to the level that I know I have the capacity to, because I guess another response to you is I've seen what me totally on fire, totally in freedom, totally expressing looks like, and it's not.
Yeah, but that's a spontaneous experience. Like, you can't take like a spontaneous on fire experience and just try to replicate it all the time. Then it would take away from the power of the spontaneous expression. So you see that and you're like, well, if I did it one time, I should do it all the time. But you're not even understanding what it fully is. It's like a miracle. It's like trying to take a miracle and say, well, we can replicate this and let's replicate a bunch of miracles. Well, it's like, no, that's not a miracle. So I don't necessarily agree. I think those people are probably better at synthetically showing up in a way they know they need to get a certain outcome. I would not say all those people are incredibly emotionally open and have this ability to just really tap in at any time. I think they're very good at showing up how they need to get a certain result, understanding human psychology, understanding how people work.
If you don't sense that I communicate at all with a certain level of a blockage, why do you not sense that?
Because I think there is a level of, you're not a rah guy. There's guys that are rah bah in your face, and you can maybe conjure that up in certain moments when it feels exciting and inspiring, or to make an ad or two on social media, but that's not generally who you are. And now we live in a world where those guys get a lot of eyeballs because they can show up like that, and that's who they are. But that's not really who you are. So you're trying to almost make yourself be somebody that you're not. And I think there's a difference between you showing up like kind of like compared to But just because there's similarities in the tonality doesn't mean it's that thing.
Well, I'll give you an example to push back a little.
Please.
My energy clearly was lower before that release than it is now.
But
So
you're not like, you're like, like you're not all
Animated, yeah. Right.
Yeah, it is. You did release some energy, but you're still not like this crazy animated person.
So I guess my question is, how do I know that there's not more energy that needs to be released to allow me to show up more powerfully and more sharp?
Sometimes there's a way to allow an awareness of a blockage to show up that isn't directly trying to find the blockage. So sometimes it's allowing yourself to be correct in your expression, and then from there, noticing how you're experiencing yourself. I think you like to try to like find and really dig for something instead of just like allowing it to naturally happen if it does. So being open to the idea of becoming more in your speaking abilities while not trying to be overly bogged down in finding the issue.
That's good. The summary to that is playing offense versus defense.
Yes.
I play defense way too much.
Well, it's more like you're running a play and you're maybe like getting like, all the way through the play, but then you're analyzing before you can just go on to the next play.
Yeah, you're thinking.
Just play the whole game.
Yeah.
Like play out the whole game, and then once this game's done, we'll go back and we'll watch film, and it doesn't have to be this big heavy thing. And sometimes it's just like a technicality that was there that you needed to work through that you weren't aware of, and it's maybe just repetition of that technicality that you won't have it happen again. But the people that sat too deeply, I remember guys that I played with, at least the guys that sat too deeply into the mistakes they made instead of looking at them as very like superficially, they are the ones that dwelled too long and didn't allow themselves just to play. And the guys that always were the players that had the best mental headspace were the ones that didn't take the small mistakes personally. I think you speaking in that way in front of large audiences and even on social media is just practice of the technicalities.
It is great practice.
It's literally just like a sport. Like
100%.
Speaking is a sport in the sense of it being very technical in how to trigger certain responses. But I don't think it's natural for someone to just consistently show up in that place all the time that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's good. I do that. I'm the guy on the field that's analyzing everything. If I make this move here, if I turn here, this person could collapse in on me and go after me here, and that would be scary. So before running the play, I need to analyze how to overcome that fear before stepping into that play. When it's like, dude, you don't even know if that fear will come up. Adrenaline could come up and you're just totally barge right through. So why are you even worried about a potential fear?
Yeah,
That's
well,
and
then if it, I mean, that's where it's similar to what I went you through in the beginning with like walking your mom to that place of letting her go into whatever your deepest fear is of happening if you don't step in. It's like, can you allow yourself to go there in every dimension of life? Can you let yourself go to that place of allowing that fear of whatever you think you're so afraid of to happen and to emotionally process through it? I think that's what I've always kind of subconsciously did, even like with football, where I might get knocked out on a play and I'll be like, oh, okay, well, I'll do that again. All right, next play.
Yeah, that's me. I waste way too much time over analyzing and over calculating every single move because I'm playing on defense in a lot of areas of my life, versus I need to go super hardcore into deep healing about what some fear potentially is if I go speak in front of 1,000 people. I need to analyze all the options of what I could be scared of and what could come up now, so I'll be best prepared there, versus like, screw it, just go speak in front of 1,000 people and then see what comes up, because something big could come up, or something small little thing could come up, or nothing could come up and you feel completely fine and comfortable and great. So what the heck are you spending so much time worried about? What am I spending most time about? Yeah, that's something I deal with for sure.
Yeah, and there's a way to go about finding deficiencies more objectively. I know, because it's like personal to yourself. It can be way deeper than it has to be, but the mistakes aren't personal. Like when you're speaking and you have a little nuance that you want to fix, like it's not personal. It can just be like, oh, well, I could try to intentionally hold this tone longer here or speak more here instead of it having to be something that's like insanely deep. Because I think it is more like skill. Speaking is a skill set that has to be sharpened with time. And I think you can let go of that idea that there's something deeper that's blocking. But that's the whole thing in of itself. Because you've built a strong positive association with going deeper within yourself. And it can be easy to get stuck in that place.
Could it be also that I struggle with the attachment to this grandiose pursuit of being the quote unquote best in everything that I do, and therefore attaching so much?
No, because the people that are that way, they're not going as deep into their shit as you are. They're more focused on just like being that vision.
Just doing the reps.
Just going like at all costs, like just driving upwards. So I would say if you were doing that, the way you're doing it isn't very efficient. If you actually are trying to get to that place that you're talking about.
Because I'm affected by that, of the metrics of, I don't care if I started 3 years ago or 3 weeks ago. If my results aren't competing with the best in the world, then I fucking suck and something needs to change. And people are like, well, they've been doing it for 10 years. I don't give a fuck what they've been doing. Like, it has to be the best kind of thing. But that's probably from a broken, insecure, grandiose view of, oh my gosh, I'm expecting this to happen in this quick time, when that's just ignorance, but based on a bullshit operating system.
Well, but it's just not even efficient. Like that tension there of like, I should be, takes away from your ability to actually be. Because then it's more about you trying to take control of what you think needs to happen instead of just allowing whatever's in front of you to get locked into your mind. So it's just, I think, a more efficient method to become very skillful at something, to let go of the tension of needing to have to be the best of it. It's just not very efficient.
No. And it's unhealthy, because if and when I do make these significant strides, it's how my life has been in a lot of ways. Right away, it'll take days, minutes, or seconds to be unsatisfied. and I'll get to that point and then I'll be like, okay, it doesn't matter, next. And that's probably from some place of, I don't know, unhealthy control or recognition or something that I'm obviously craving.
To me, all it is just clearly a strong desire you have to get whatever it is that you want. And when you care a lot about something, which is, I would say, a very vulnerable thing, and especially in today's society, to really care a lot about something, because then there's something actually on the line. And so you want to make sure that your heart's protected and that this better fucking happen because it's what I want so much and you care so much about it. But sometimes that not to say to not care, but the excessive care can kind of put a little bit of that excessive pressure on it that can take away from a greater awareness of how to actually get it. So to me, all it is your maybe heaviness towards making it happen is just a strong demonstration of the desire you have to get it. And it can just be that.
Example, I just before said something about, maybe speaking, and I was giving the example of, yeah, you don't even know if you would be scared, so just get up and speak first, and then you'll find out if you'll be scared. And then I corrected myself, well, I don't even know. I did that because you would always challenge me on doing that through our coaching sessions. Whenever I would get in those rants and be like, yeah, how are you worried about finances when you, and then you'd cut me off and be like, what's the power in that? Why did you keep doing that? And why do you do that?
Well, just our brain likes to defer responsibility because it can, if it owns fully all of the thoughts that we have, it can be overwhelming. So our brain will oftentimes default to saying you instead of I. And you can even feel it, right? I can feel it when I change my speech from saying you to I. It's like, ooh, it can feel a little, like it feels a little personal.
One that I love that you always correct people when people automatically just say these cliche stereotypes like, yeah, in Miami, I can't date good women or I can't find good people. It's just, and then you'll like challenge them and be like, maybe you should share that for yourself because that hasn't been my experience. Yeah. But that's a good example of people project that everybody is dealing with the problems that they're dealing with. And it's like, no, that's not the case. That's you personally.
That's a you problem.
Because
buddy.
then if I take it on personally, that means I have to take the responsibility and ask myself, okay, why do I view the world in this way? Is there something in me that I need to correct?
Yeah, and that can be a very difficult thing, especially in a world that's becoming more and more difficult to just survive, to take that responsibility. But ultimately, I think in the long run is the most beneficial thing, taking on that personal responsibility for it.
Forgiveness. There's a thought that I have that my blessing will be halted at the level of forgiveness that I need to extend.
If that's what you believe, that will be true.
Meaning, and there's scripture that I've read that aligns with that as far as my belief system, at least, with if I'm holding on a grudge, all that is a spiritual blockage that I'm holding, that I'm preventing my next blessing for. Makes sense? And so I wanted to ask you about this because where do you find the line between not being overly emotional in somebody's life, like you were referring to my family member, and being emotionally attached with the responsibility and letting go, but not resenting in the let go, but truly forgiving so that I don't have that heavy energy I'm holding on to. Specifically, since we've talked about it, I believe, in some coaching sessions, but I truly believe that
I think I know where you're going with it.
Okay.
Yeah, the first thing you have to do is be really honest about where you're really at with that person. And so underneath the care can actually be anger, resentment, frustration towards. And so you have to get really clear with yourself about how you really feel. Because oftentimes we don't want to feel negative ways about our family. And we definitely don't want to tell other people we feel negative ways about our family generally. So in order for you to move beyond that place of that emotional addiction or attachment, you have to be really honest about what's underneath the addiction to it. And most of the time in those circumstances is some anger, frustration. I'm sure you got some. I mean, for the time that you've had to spend moving past your own stuff to be able to adequately show up for your wife. You know, like that would have never happened if your mom was more maybe emotionally sturdy or stable. And I know that's not something that I'm just now bringing up. That's a thought that you've definitely had. So being able to be really honest with yourself about how you really feel about the circumstance, and then allow yourself to go through an emotional process of expressing all of that, whether that's like you being in your own space and just fuck you, I hate you, fuck you, and maybe not necessarily doing it to them personally. I wouldn't recommend that, but being in your own space and like emotionally processing through all of that which is actually there, because that which is unaddressed will eventually show its rearing head. So that's why unexpressed resentment and frustration towards people will always eventually come out, whether that's in the form of passive aggression or in the form of an eventual inevitable blow up. So the one person that you cared about so much then becomes the source of all this pent up anger and frustration. And you see it in relationships a lot. We'll see it with relationships with family and intimate dynamics. So being able to have a space where you're able to adequately process through what's actually there, like the hatred that might exist inside of you. And maybe people listening to this might be like, oh, I don't have hatred, but it's like, well, maybe you do, but it's not personal, right? It doesn't have to mean anything about your mom. It doesn't have to mean anything about you. It can just be an emotional experience that you're having that needs to be addressed. But when people make it so personal, like, oh, my mom, no, I can never hate my mom. No, I never hate my mom. But it's like, well, just take a second and like sit into that. There could be some of that feeling there. And oftentimes there is in a relationships dynamic with kids and parents, with kids that have taken on an excessive amount of responsibility for their parents. So you need to get really clear about how you really feel underneath some of the addiction. And I'm not saying you can't feel hatred, but also love for your mom at the same time either. And that's very important for people to understand. It's just because you feel hatred doesn't mean you don't also feel love. The depth in which you're experiencing one oftentimes is the other. But
something you're saying
important.
Is making me have some clarity on certain dynamics. Oddly, since Camilla and I got married, we never had family issues with her side of the family, my side of the family. And since we got married, we've both had abnormal issues with both of our families in ways that we've never experienced.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Why?
Because both of you have been a certain lighthouse in your dynamics. And now instead of giving all of that to your family, you're giving it to each other. And when you stop giving to a horse that was used to being fed every single day, the horse probably isn't going to be too happy. So not only for your family feelings towards you, but also just the overall stability of your families in general, those foundations are getting rocked because you guys are no longer giving to them in the ways that you were, because you're giving it in the way that God intended it to each other. So that's just like, to me, is very like logical.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, what's happening.
Another thought that I had was there's levels of forgiveness. The first level is maybe extending grace or an apology or a conversation. The next level is extending grace, love, and forgiveness when you don't have the clear opportunity to, whether somebody's dead or unwilling to speak to you kind of idea. And what you were saying, you still have to address and navigate through those emotions. So two people, I'm taking the role, you know who, I've talked about this in some coaching sessions with you, but one on Camilla's side and one on my side of my family. They both clearly did me wrong, but because of what I believe and because of everything I preach, I knew that, and just, I don't want any of that negative energy in my life, in my presence, in my essence at all. I am constantly working to eradicate any sort of evil energy out of me, my clients, anybody around me, because I know it's poison. It's one of the biggest blessing blockers to most people's success is the pain and unresolved emotions and trauma that they're holding on to. Usually 99 out of 100 times, that's associated with some other form of a relationship, somebody that they have resentment, guilt, shame, or anger towards. And so I reached out to the person on Camilla's family, set up a counseling session, therapy session, and I apologized first when I felt they were the ones mostly in the wrong. And then I presented a plan. I said, hey, let's go through these exercises as far as writing out some certain things to do, and then get on another therapy session in about 30 days, something like that. And on the call, he was like, yeah, let's do it. And then when I presented the information, never heard back from him. And it's interesting because the therapist told me after, he was like, he's not going to do that. He's not in a place to do that emotionally. And I was, more frustrated because I'm like, well, dude, I'm trying to freaking help you. Like, what else do you want me to do? And then similar on my side of the family, I had a situation happen, and I've been dealing with for a couple months now. And
hold on, that story was just kind of like, got a little gross, like a little gross feeling, because it's like understanding human nature. And I mean, that person is not a generally conscious being, are they? No. So he's operating under very primitive circumstances. And what you did was you took someone that's clearly not living a life in accordance to like how you believe life should be lived, and you just gave him all of this power. All this, you said, I'm sorry, and you made like an equal playing field of the circumstance as far as how you guys were by even apologizing. I thought that was a terrible idea, honestly. And you just gave power to someone that was not capable of properly being able to handle it. And to expect him to be able to equally meet you in that space, I think was naive.
That's good.
And then you felt bad about the circumstance after that you're trying to help him. But I would argue that the space that he's in, he has to have something happen to him to make him wake up. Like, you can't take on that responsibility. That's not yours to have. And actually, it's irresponsible on your end to take on that responsibility, because that actually probably prolonged him maybe even coming out of the hole that he's in. Sometimes people got to go deeper and deeper into holes. But by you saying sorry for something that you should not have apologized for, that wasn't genuine, that right there too, it just fed into his ego of like, oh yeah, I am right. Meanwhile, trying to help him, but by you apologizing, you validated him and that he was correct. So what's he trying to change if the person that he probably looks up to is validating him by apologizing? I don't think that's very smart to do. So now his ego got bigger to some extent. So it's important to be able to understand really where people are at outside of like your desire for the intention of what you want. Because obviously you want cohesiveness there in that dynamic. But that cohesiveness isn't going to come from you directly trying to meet him on an equal playing field. It's got to be you almost forgetting about him in the best way that you can and pursuing your life of excellence as much as possible. And then if he gets to a point one day where he sees you on top of your mountain, he might actually make a change.
Interesting. Let me tie in the question with this other situation, and I could take that as a learning lesson to how to apply and work through this other issue that I'm having with a family member. I also felt they were completely in the wrong, and I've made attempts to reach out to say, hey, let's all talk, and this person wasn't willing to. And so how does, I guess, two-part question to that.
Let go.
How does somebody forgive when the person that you are trying to forgive and give an opportunity to forgive, I'm not holding on to it. It's like, I'm just attached to the conversation of like, bro, let's just sit down and talk about it.
To have to like,
but they refuse to do it. And so how does somebody navigate
forgive in silence? You can forgive without interacting with that person. But also, I mean, there's a dimension to, you can emotionally forgive him, but that's not someone that you really want to like be interacting with, I guess, from the standpoint of like forgiving, from the standpoint of like spending serious time with him ever. So even if you did come to like some cohesiveness, he still isn't someone that you'd want to entrust your time or energy or deep thoughts with. So I think a lot of it's letting go of the role. It sounds like you're just running into resistance in those dynamics with people that have depended too much on you doing that, and now they're maybe rebelling against that. It's felt comfortable before you holding that role, but now for them, maybe it's like they want a level of their own independence. And I think what's best for you and those people is to just let go.
Well, you said it in the beginning with first family member I brought up as far as an addiction or a need to help or be a savior or however we want to define it. And it's probably completely related with these two people because there is probably that in my ego or my insecurity or subconscious.
We have to say it's just programming. I think it's important for you to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just programming.
Just my programming.
It's what you learned how to do.
Yeah.
Because then when you you feel the lightness of that,
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, just my programming. Oh, there it is, my program again. Oh, hey buddy. I know that voice.
It's a lot better than ego and security.
Yeah, it is. And actually
deep
allows
trauma.
Well, yes, and it allows you to be able to move on from that. And I think Gabe, you found so much power in this. This is where your coaching is so fucking powerful because a lot of people aren't even aware of these concepts that you're talking about. But we've talked about this before, but you've gone so deep into this, it's not as necessary for you anymore.
Yeah.
You've done it.
True.
You've done a lot of it. Now it's maybe just more.
I'm like getting bored and looking for the next thing. When
Exactly.
It's like, bro, just look
but
ahead.
the next thing is now living.
Yeah.
You've gone through it. You've done the deep stuff. And it's not to say there won't be some minor things within your programming that don't necessarily serve you that you won't process through at some point. But it'll just naturally happen. But you're through the thick. Like you're through it.
So this is a great transition to a question that I had for you. Something I've noticed about you is you are extremely great at not judging people, but being the person that is willing to speak truth to people and audit people for their flaws. I'll give an example. I've watched how you move in social dynamics and different relationships. You're never the type to project your coaching onto people that aren't seeking it out. It threw me off. We were in a snowboarding trip in Colorado about a year and a half ago. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I asked you about it. I was like, bro, you're a different personality. You're a different person. And that's one of the reasons I'm glad that we got to show people a little bit of your gift today, because just the Keyen answering questions is not your true power. Your true power is in helping people navigate through things psychologically and internally, and create those breakthroughs and express and release. But in social dynamics, you're just kind of fluid to who you want to be in that moment. Like we were doing a social circle with some friends in Denver, and we were going around and doing the typical, hey, let's do intros and introduce yourself, who you are. And everybody's giving their introduction. I was working at Google at the time. Gabriel Pinto, I work at Google. And then, one of our other friends answers, and then comes Keyen. And I'm pretty sure you said, hey, I'm Keyen. I'm an underwear model, with a complete straight face.
Oh, yeah.
Like you just didn't give a fuck.
Which I did do that for a while.
When you just don't care. And then you'll just be like the chill guy that's sitting there that people will be like, who is this guy? Like, what's his deal? But underneath the hood, what they don't know is if you do a private session, it's like a whole freaking explosion, which we can maybe talk about. We've had straight up exorcism level releases and evil energy that was released out of me in some of our coaching sessions. But people wouldn't be able to pick up on that on the surface. But I guess how you move is just energetically, you trust that the universe will bring the right people that gravitate and need your presence, your power, that essence. But to wrap all that in, you're not the type to judge or ever talk bad about people. I don't see that at all, and I've never experienced that. If somebody's overweight, you can give them total love and just be like, oh, cool, man, that's awesome. But the moment that they ask you, hey, I'm interested in coaching with you, can you help me? And they're serious and they pay you, it's like a whole nother switch happens where you'll get on the first call and look at them and be like, why the fuck are you so overweight? And just hit them exactly where they need to be hit. So talk about how, if you agree with that, talk about how you've been able to create that separation, because I struggle actually, I think, with making as much of the separation of, call it, I guess, church versus state or whatever. Like I'm kind of me everywhere I go. And we've talked about this, but I also think that holds me back from being as powerfully in that container of coaching. But I also feel I do it out of a place of lack of, I have to show people how great I am outside of that container. But you're very comfortable of just like, I don't need to teach you anything, tell you anything. But the moment we're working together, it's a whole nother level.
I think I'm very comfortable with all the different dimensions to myself. Like I have like so many different parts of me that I've explored that I like to play with. And for some other people that may be a little more simple in their nature, where they're not as dynamic of a personality, they're able to maybe be more consistent with that. And that's just how they show up because that's just who they are. But who I am is multiple different dimensions that I like to not get stuck in one too long. Otherwise I feel kind of bogged down or I feel like energetically drained. So for me, it's more of just kind of who I am, wanting to always dabble and play in like the different parts of myself, because if I stay in one too long, I start to, like I said, get kind of like that energy. So if I've been in a certain energy for a while, I like to dabble in a different one.
Would you agree with what I said specifically about when somebody engages to work with you in coaching, you're really good at sensing what they need to break through. But where does the line go from noticing what they need to change versus judging them when you're not working with them or when you are working with them? What's the difference with that?
It's just very energy inefficient to be expressing those things to people. Like I don't want to expend my energy delivering that to somebody because it could be good for them. That's where some people are like, oh, well, you don't want to help people in that moment. And I'm like, no, like I don't feel an excessive responsibility to people at all to help. Even if I feel like it could happen, I like to kind of be relaxed a lot of the time. And that puts me in a certain heightened state that I don't like to live in. It's kind of the same thing as the miracle concept. It's like, I don't want to constantly be living in a state where I'm performing those type of experiences because then it takes away the excitement for me. So being able to limit those experiences to a specific container or when I really feel like I want to do it keeps the excitement for those experiences happening for me.
Okay, I got a good take. One differentiator is judging is for you, auditing and challenging someone in a coaching capacity or just a helpful capacity is for them. Truly. Yeah. And you operate from that way. I've never felt judged by you. If I present issues or challenges I'm facing, you're really good at pinpointing, oh, it's because you're struggling with this and boom, boom, boom. But you're not doing it for you. You're not doing it for your ego. You're not doing it to make you feel better or anything personal like that. You're literally just doing it for the result to help somebody. So
no, it's for me.
Okay.
I wouldn't do it if it didn't feel good to me in that moment, which is why I don't do it all the time. So if it doesn't feel like good to me or right in that moment to do, then I won't do it. But when I do feel inspired or where I'm in, there's an energetic exchange that happens where me and this person are in this container together, that feels really good to me. Really good to me.
That reminds me, one of my favorite stories, I referred a contact to you for coaching and you guys had some back and forths, to say the least, where you ruffled some feathers. She was her ego was a bit offended, which you tend to do and are good at navigating. But she asked a question through qualifying you in the sales process to see if she wanted to work with you. And she asked something like, why do you do this? Why do you do coaching? Do you remember what you answered?
No.
Not surprised.
I remember a lot.
You answered, apparently your answer was just one word, money.
Yeah.
Why did you answer it that way?
So when I sense, now this isn't happening like real time, not like in analyzing it when it's happening.
Sorry to cut you off, but it's so great because she was like wanting so bad.
Because she was so deep in her own insecurity.
I'm trying to save the whales and I want to help everybody. And you're just like, money.
I mean, that's what it would have been for her if we would have worked together. You know what I mean? So it's always, my answers tend to be specific towards the individual. That's how I generally answer things.
Why did you feel that was the right answer?
Because because that gal was so deep into her feminine ego. Like her ego was so big and she wanted me to dance in that space with her ego. And I don't play that game. Like I don't play that game. Like I don't go there. And she wanted me to go somewhere that I wasn't going to go. And she wasn't willing to be able to surrender a level of control in that space that needed to happen. So at that point, I'm just going to troll. A lot of people just give into that. And if we start a dynamic where she's, qualifying me, like that's not a dynamic that starts in a way that I know is conducive to the greatest results. There has to be a level of openness to surrender that has to happen, because I'm not going to spend the whole time in our container trying to fight for a level of control. Like that space is my space. And when you enter it, you're agreeing to be submissive to that space. Now, by showing up submissively in that space, you become more powerful outside of the space, which is super cool. That's what I think people love about it. It's a space where they can finally like let go of that control and not have to be dominant. But when you allow yourself to be submissive in the right containers, it's what allows you truly to be able to become more powerful outside of those spaces. I think the most powerful men in the world know how to be feminine. They know how to be submissive. That's how they learn. That's how they grow. That's how they become more advanced version of themselves. Very rigid, overly masculine men don't advance very well because they're so closed off.
Question I
like. But if she's not willing to get into that space of a level of surrender, I don't want to have to exert energy in that space that I know I would have to continually fight for that role. And I'm not going to do that in my space. Same thing with the relationship. I'm not going to fight for that role. It's like you either know who I am and you can feel it because you're connected to your body as a woman, or you're stuck in your head. And I'm not going to stick around to try to help a woman that's in that space if she's not willing to at least play my game, because my game's better than hers.
But responding with that answer, that was very specific to her. It gets her out of her head.
Yeah, because it triggers her emotionally, which gets her in her body. Some of those really intelligent gals, man, they're so stuck up in their head. Yeah, and it prevents them from getting the relationships they want. Prevents them from feeling how they want.
Can we talk about that for 2 seconds as far as that big issue with a lot of independent boss babe women in the feminism wave, and now they're facing a lot of regret. Just, statistically, but even personally, like a lot of women that I know that I'm friends with that are approaching that age of 30, 32, 34, 37, and they've built these businesses, they've had successful careers, and deep down you can sense they're regretting their choices of being all independent and expressive in their 20s and partying and everything, and they haven't settled down, and now they're getting real, real lonely.
Yeah, it's difficult because society is set up to build and grow the collective feminine ego. So I can't even really blame a lot of these women, even though it would most benefit them to take personal responsibility to be able to move beyond it. It's hard to blame them because of the way society is set up. Like how safe we become as a society due to the structures that men have created and put into place has allowed women to be able to have this level of confidence, to be able to feel as safe as they do, to be able to believe that they are men. If there wasn't this much safety in society where they don't have to worry when they walk down the street about what's going to happen to them, there's not a chance we're even having these conversations. So due to the nature of the amount of safety we've created as a society and the amount that government's willing to kick in and help, let's say the not less fortunate, but the less capable, it gives this false sense of entitlement that is naturally going to bleed into the women of society.
Yeah, I would also say with the popular quote, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men. I would also say the good times that create weak men create strong women. Because by default, somebody has to step up in the family dynamic, and there's too many weak men in our society that are feminized and emasculated, and therefore the woman has to step up to provide and take care of the family. So I believe it's a men problem first. There's been stories that we talk about, some of us amongst our friends, as far as the Keyen stories of the people that you've helped in our community, and the funny stories that we hear, from vaping stories to I could I have a whole list. Where does the inspiration come from to be willing to do those radical acts when it comes to helping people find their breakthrough that most people aren't willing to do? And would you say that's the main thing, if not the only thing, that separates you from a bunch of other coaches as far as why you're so successful as a coach?
I would say that's probably a leading factor, but I also wouldn't say brave, because that's just who I am. So like, I know people look at certain characteristics that people have, be like, oh my gosh, like they have so much courage or so much bravery, but actually they would never do anything else. Like, I don't really give myself that much credit for it because I would never do anything else. And I think back to, I was at a wedding this last weekend and I was talking to one of the guys and he's like, dude, I was telling somebody the other day about, we used to have plays we run on defense. And he's like, two of the funniest plays that we ever ran in college. He's like, you were part of them. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you remember that play where there was when a guy's positioned a certain way, I would communicate with the other linebacker. I played linebacker on defense to move in a certain way. So it was like he had to cover that guy. So I, as a joke one day in the film room, was like, hey, I'll act like I'm blowing a load on your face, and you catch it and rub it on your face to know that that's the guy, like as a joke during a game. And it was so funny because like we did it, and I like this to him, and he goes like this back to me. We both kind of giggled. We ran the play, and it was just absolutely hilarious. And he told me about that story, and it's just like shit like that like whether that's helping someone in a positive way or just doing it, I've never really had that fear of doing something just like weird or goofy and just doing it or saying it. And I've done much crazier, wild things, not in relation to helping people, but it's just kind of who I am as a person to be willing to go to those places and do the things that other people are like, oh, what? Like, I can't imagine that, or that's like too much or whatever.
Can we talk through that as far as maybe some of your craziest client situations or experiences that you're willing to share, or just like wild moments in coaching or in general?
I mean,
anything that
there's
comes
just been
up?
so many. It's funny. I just kind of lose track just because it just happens so much. People are pretty bought in that container when we get in there. I mean, there's one where I made this guy who was like, had this addiction to his progress. So he's like, oh, I've lost, 80 pounds already. And I just feel so good about that. And that was kind of what was preventing him from being able to continue to lose more weight because he wanted to lose more. And I just said, stand up, take your shirt off, and grab your fat and go, yummy, 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 yummy. And this guy had one of the smallest egos in the world. This guy had got unreal results because of how surrendered he was in the container. And he just did it so just casually, freely. And he did it for 10 seconds. And he tried to sit down no, keep going, keep going, keep going. Do it more, do it more, do it more. And he just did it for probably 2-3 minutes. And then when he sat down, he felt all of it. And it was almost like he just came to Jesus in that moment of he's like, oh my gosh, I've just been leaning on that feeling of the success that I have from losing the first 80 pounds. He's like, I got to let go of that. I'm like, yeah.
That's
Put your shirt
powerful.
back on. All right, let's keep going. Yeah.
That reminds me of an event that we did together, and people were excited, talking after, and you were connecting with people. And one person specifically came up to you and was telling you, I don't know what you guys were talking about, but probably a bunch of his accomplishments, things about his life. He was just racing, going. And you were just listening. And then I remember you telling me that you literally just responded and stopped him mid-talk and said, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Well, just that's what he needed. And people, this is, context is everything.
Yeah.
Right? But he was asking for it. He was literally subconsciously asking me to stop him in his anxiousness. Because he wasn't speaking from a place of really genuinely wanting to share what was going on. He was speaking from a very anxious place. And what he needed was a sense of stability. Someone to stop him in his tracks. Hey, you don't need to be anxious anymore. Stop. And it jolts him out of it and puts him in his body. And oftentimes women need that too.
Men in our generation need to do that more to their women.
Well, I think they first need to take accountability for themselves and their behavior. I think you have to be very good at reflecting on yourself. Now, sometimes there's a little bit of a whoa, what? You said what? And I said, yeah. I said, shut the fuck up. What? Why? Because you're out of control. You were just talking way too much. My best friend, I've had girls be like, "Oh, you're right." And my best friend, he did that one time. He was at an event, and there was this girl that was talking at the table who was just like super out of control, where she was like really in her mind and just like talking uncontrollably. And he said, "Hey, shut the fuck up." And she goes, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Yeah, you were talking way too much." And the girl next to her goes, "I wish someone would tell me to shut the fuck up." And then the guy next to him looks at both of them, and at him, he's like, "What's going on? Like, what just happened?" Like, mind blown. That guy was an incredible client after that for my friend. And also that guy now is one of his primary assistants working with him. Guy's like, "How do I sign
the
up?"
shit out of it.
Yeah, he's like, "What did you just do?" Because it takes somebody very emotionally grounded within themselves to be able to actually pull something like that off. Like, you have to have the confidence to be able to like be anchored into what you truly feel and know in that moment. Then you have to stand by it. So some people can maybe meet 50%. They could be like, "Hey, shut the fuck up." And she's like, "What?" And they're like, "Sorry."
And then start a big fight.
Yeah. But it's like, no, hey, you were just really out of control. What do you say to that? If somebody says that, yeah, I guess I was. Like, yeah. And then the next thing they're checking for, the person's checking for, the woman's checking for is there emotion behind it? Like, if I'm like, "Shut the fuck up," then that puts this like, "Oh," in her. What if it's just, and she senses that, because that's what she's really looking for, because that phrase often can come with deep emotion. So a woman is looking for, "Oh shoot, is he mad?" And I'm like, "No, I just said shut the fuck up." Then she's like, "Oh, why?" "Well, because of this." "Oh, yeah."
Smile. And to your point, a lot of times, like
I can say it with a smile on my face.
That's what they're craving so much. And take the words out of it, but the energy I do agree with, as far as like some women are craving that like somebody to put them in their place, the masculine frame to put them in their place in that way so much because of how much it's lacking. Yeah. Full permission, if you have any thoughts, do you have any memories of any coaching experiences we've had where you've done something similar to that with me, or anything you recall as far as just times with us that you recall?
I feel like a lot, but I don't. It's hard for me to recall. You could probably recall more than I could as far as some of those moments. But I think I did do it every session probably. Yeah.
Yeah. When you don't display the gifts as openly as others may expect or know, how do you trust that you'll still attract the clients? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think God wants me to explore all dimensions to myself. And when I do honor all the different parts of myself, I give space to them. It allows for me to be in a more of a free state, which I think is my highest point of attraction. So when I'm operating in accordance to like my most aligned state, that's what allows me to attract. So I get beyond the mental idea of like, well, logically, if I'm talking to people in this way, this amount of times, then this will happen. Like, I don't like to exist in that like more like that linear mental playing field. I like to exist in the space of when I'm operating in my most aligned form, God gives me what I want. So it's a story that I've created in my mind that exists beyond like the mental 3-dimensional idea of how to get things. To me, it's more fun, and I like the not knowing. Whereas other people are like, "Well, how are you going to get what you want? How can you rest on that?" But I'm like, exactly. I'm like, that to me is exciting. Like freedom and spontaneity and the unknown are things that I value deeply as a person. So because there's this option to be able to play more in the space of, they say, the quantum of operating in my highest, most aligned form, and then that being my highest point of attraction, that field or that like thought process attracted me a lot, because I don't want to be bored with life. And if life's too predictable, I'm bored.
Because you seem, from knowing you, not by what you give off, way busier than most people would expect. Like when you get on a call, you're very calm, but I know you're constantly in demand as far as coaching and have a full list of clients. Yeah, why is that, or why do you think that is?
Central nervous system regulation. Like my mom and I had a conversation about this the other day. She's like, when I was back home with my family, I would go and do like 2 calls, and she'd hear me in the room just like going off or yelling or something, like going deep into something. And then I'd come out and be like, "Hey, what's up, Mom?" And she's sitting there. She's like, "What?" I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Okay, whatever." But it's I attribute my ability to be able to pivot and transition because I've allowed myself to like adjust to high levels of stress and stimulation. And so when I can go into high stress environments and actively process them emotionally, I can become more regulated in them. And I think that just comes with time and consistency of putting yourself into the line of fire. That's why stress can be healthy if you know how to actively navigate it. Whereas stress for other people can be very toxic because they don't know how to adjust. They're just put into a fight or flight response, don't know how to get out of it. Whereas I know that when I put myself into stressful circumstances, it allows me to be able to adjust to that level of stress. Even though I can feel the tension, my central nervous system then becomes more regulated and I can show up more grounded in those spaces.
A couple of years ago, you were telling me about this plan that you had, if I could recall correctly. It was you were going to take a month off in 1 year, at the end of the year, and go travel.
Yeah, I was like 4 years ago, I think now.
And then the next year take 2 months off, next year take 3 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I think last year or the year before you were in Bali, I believe, for like a Muay Thai training camp, and then you ended up doing a Muay Thai fight or jiu-jitsu.
Thailand. Yeah,
is that related to this plan of what you're transitioning into tomorrow? Talk about your Africa to Europe tour, why you're doing it. Are you going to be coaching out there? What's the plan?
Yeah, so I just want to go get lost out there. I like to spend seasons of being very like predictable, and that's what this last season of life for me was. I spent a year locked into Miami, and with an intention of really reestablishing myself back there, reintegrating with my community people, integrating with new community people, connecting and meeting with as many people as possible, and in an environment where it was very, I don't want to say controlled, but very intentional. And so for me, knowing all dimensions of myself, I have a very like controlled, intentional side, but I also have a very rebellious, Viking, adventurous side that also has to be able to be seen. Otherwise, that Viking part of myself will just like blow shit up. So I have to be able to have time, knowing myself, knowing my avatar, to be able to go and explore and raid and just like get lost in a new land, soothing that part of myself. Otherwise, I know that I could potentially create destruction in my life in a way that I don't want to.
Okay. So what are you doing? What's the plan?
My plan is to go to Morocco first and enjoy my time there, see what happens. I got a few things planned, but outside of that, I more so just want to see where my inspiration takes me. And I'll have a videographer there. It'll be the first time doing that. So we'll see if I like that or not. Just letting me kind of be present because I don't want to have to like tell what somebody else has to do or perform or anything. So that'll be an interesting experience. But then I'll bounce around and see different people that I know in and throughout Europe and meet new people and see where life takes me in that space.
And then you're ending in Russia?
Yeah.
Why Russia and how long?
My heart just felt called to go there. Like I feel like there's something for me. I can like logically try to like explain why I'm going, but I don't really know. I don't know until I go. So for the sake of it, I could entertain people a little bit with like maybe a little more justification as far as my brain's saying right now. But I want to go somewhere that's edgy and that most people would never go. And I think learning the trends of what people are drawn to, what people aren't drawn to, and exploring the things that society at large is not drawn to is very an area that I like to look into. And so going to a place like Russia where people are like, what? No, why would you go there? I'm like, exactly. Exactly. Right there. Now, and it's worked out to where I've had some really cool things unfold. Like I know some people out there. I have a client who his family heavily is involved in the government up in like Siberia. So they have a bunch of like land and stuff I can go check out. but we'll see what's really out there for me. I just know my heart feels pulled to it. I try not to justify too much. I try just to follow what I feel connected to. And from there, I normally find out after the real why. So,
love it. So are you going to be working and coaching out there? I know there was talks of taking off.
Yeah. So I have 3 clients that I'll take into the beginning part of my travel, but then outside of that, when they're done, then I'll be done until I'm back from Russia. But I also don't like to put too hard of a cap on that because I don't know what's going to happen over there. My brain says that I'll be done completely, but maybe God has other plans for me when I'm in that space. But I'm just doing my part in my inspiration by ending my time with clients, and then whatever happens when I'm there will happen.
Do you know where you're going after? You going back to Miami?
Yep, that's the plan.
Cool.
That is the plan, but life happens.
Love it, bro. Love you, man. Thank you for all the help, impact, coming on here. Maybe share where everybody could find you, get connected with you, and maybe a little bit about your coaching if they'd want to be interested in working with you.
Cool. So right now, all my content is going to be just some like fun travel stuff. I'll be sprinkling some coaching stuff here and there, but I'll be exercising a different dimension to myself over these next 4 months. So it's not going to be as much like coaching Keyen, but more just maybe more fun, adventurous part of me. So don't expect to get a whole lot of coaching stuff if you follow me on Instagram. But official Keyen, I'm sure you'll put the spelling of the show notes for my name, is where you can find me on Instagram. And this has been incredible, dude. Thank you so much for having me on and trusting me in the space to be able to facilitate that, which you allowed yourself to go through in the beginning. And I mean, shit, your bravery is a testament to where you are right now and where you're going. So, and maybe when I say your bravery isn't even something that's brave either, maybe it's just you showing up as you are. But it's admirable to me for you to be able to allow yourself to receive in the way that you did. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, brother.